All right, welcome to the Explainer. We're all facing these massive global crises. Our climate, our ecosystems, you name it. But what if the solutions aren't in some futuristic new tech, but are actually hidden in ancient wisdom? Today, we're going to explore a project that does just that, looking for answers in the sacred practices of our past.
So let's just start with a really big question that kind of frames this whole thing. We're facing a planet in crisis, right? From climate change to the loss of biodiversity. But are our modern kind of top-down solutions, are they missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? That is the central question we're digging into today.
First up, let's just quickly set the stage here to really get a handle on the scale of the problem that we're all up against.
Okay, so scientists have laid out these 9 planetary boundaries. You can think of them as fundamental tipping points for the Earth's life support systems. The research we're looking at today, well, it kicks off from a pretty stark reality. We are pushing way past these critical thresholds.
Now, we've tried solving this with big global agreements like the Earth Summit back in 1992. But here's the problem. These formal top-down rules, they've had pretty limited success. Biodiversity is still in decline, and the impacts from climate change are actually speeding up. So, if the old ways, the official ways, aren't quite cutting it, what's the alternative? And this brings us to the project's really core and, pretty unconventional idea.
They call it the ecology of the sacred. So, what does that actually mean? Well, it's about the deep, interwoven relationship between a culture's sacred practices and beliefs, and the ecological systems, the physical laws, and even the astronomical cycles that surround them. It's really about seeing humans and nature not as two separate things, but as part of one single integrated whole.
And what's so fascinating is how this knowledge is stored. It's not always in books or, written laws. Instead, it's encoded in what these researchers call nonverbal languages. Things like the rhythm of a calendar, the design of a building, food traditions, dance, art. You get the idea.
This whole idea taps into the work of a Nobel laureate, Douglas North. Now, he made this key distinction between formal institutions, our laws and regulations, and informal ones, like our cultural norms and shared values. And this project argues that maybe we focused way too much on the formal rules, when the real power for change, well, it might actually lie in these deep, informal cultural roots.
Okay, so how can these cultural traditions actually help us in a crisis? This is where a really powerful concept from the writer Nassim Nicholas Taleb comes into play, and honestly, it's totally central to this whole project.
The concept is called anti-fragility, and it's a quality that goes way beyond just being tough or resilient. An anti-fragile system, it doesn't just withstand shocks and volatility and stress. It actually learns, it adapts, and it gets stronger because of them. Let's think about it like this. A fragile teacup. It gets a shock, it shatters. A robust cannonball, it resists that same shock. But an anti-fragile system, it would actually benefit from that shock. The big idea here is that the ecology of the sacred is what builds this anti-fragility into a community, letting it, thrive on chaos.
Now, this all sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually study something like this in the real world? Let's take a look at the 2 very different places the researchers are planning to investigate all this.
So, the project sets up this fantastic comparison between the UK and Mexico. In Yorkshire, the focus is on community art and ancient events like Beltane and Midsummer. But then in Mexico, it's all about indigenous cycles and rituals, with a lab right in Mexico City that's connecting dance, traditional calendars, and even food with local farmers. And check out this timing. The project is set to run from 2026 to 2029 for a very specific reason. In 2026 and 27, the researchers have this incredibly rare opportunity to observe the Aztec Fuego Nuevo, or New Fire ceremony. This is a powerful ritual of cultural renewal that only happens once every 52 years. So, after all this research, the workshops, the observations, the analysis, what's the ultimate goal here? Why does any of this matter for the rest of us? First off, the goal is to actually change the conversation among the experts. The project is going to produce 5 different scholarly papers to get this evidence right into the formal academic discussion about ecology and culture.
But this knowledge isn't meant to just stay locked up in academia. Nope.
There are going to be 4 major public events at places like the famous Yorkshire Sculpture Park, bringing these ideas directly out into the community.
And to really take the story global, one powerful documentary film is planned to weave together all the science, the cultures, and the wisdom into a story that literally everyone can understand and connect with.
But the ultimate goal, the real bottom line, is to translate ancient wisdom into practical action. It's about informing public policy and, maybe most importantly, giving communities real, tangible tools to not just survive stress, but to actually thrive because of it.
And that really leaves us with a fascinating question to chew on. This research is happening in Yorkshire and Mexico City, sure, but the principle behind it is universal. So what hidden knowledge in our own local art, in our community rituals, in our shared traditions, what could make our own homes and neighborhoods truly anti-fragile? What wisdom have we all forgotten?